back with another episode. Our guest today is Jaclyn Tracy. Jaclyn, it's awesome to get a chance to have a conversation with you and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I do believe that you and I, we really do just have so many similarities in our approach to holistic lifestyle, to intentional lifestyle, to sustainable lifestyle. And so I'm so excited to chat with you one-on-one today. So thank you so much for having me.
Sure. No, it's a pleasure. And yeah, we've done some work together at Gravity, and I do think there's a lot of commonality in our approach. So we'll get to all that. But as you know, we like to start at the beginning. So talk a little bit about kind of those early days, that kind of early memories of who maybe you were as a kid and what your family dynamics were, and anything that kind of stands out from your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in Illinois, central Illinois. And I grew up in a unique family. When I was growing up, I have a wonderful family that we did have. I was so lucky and so blessed to have, we had dinner together every night. But I also had a very diverse family in terms of perspective. So, my parents are conservative. My sister was very liberal, my older sister, and then my brother was an anarchist. And then, my younger sister and I, I'm 4 years, there's a 4-year gap between my older sister and I. So my younger sister and I would just sit there and observe these dinner conversations and really take them in. And I do think that because of those dinner conversations, that really opened me up to diverse perspectives, so that I can really, step into somebody else's shoes, and even especially in, today's political world, really kind of just try to dig deeper about why you're thinking that way, and how did you get to that perspective. So really lucky about that. And then my brother also is so I'm, the founder of SISTAIN, a sustainable lifestyle brand. And my brother, who, is, now I'd say he's more of a libertarian, but he was an anarchist at the time, traveling the world. And he's just always been this voice in my head, because he does live off grid. He lives in the woods with his family of 4. They live in a 1-room cabin. It's like a tiny cabin. They share one room when they sleep, all 6 of them. They have a wood burning stove. They have solar panels. They have permaculture gardens, an outhouse. They just live that alternative lifestyle, and very, very focused on, the environment. And so for me, my brother's name is Steven. Steven was just such an inspiration to me, because he was, at the time it was don't eat carbs, low fat everything, and he was just constantly challenging me, don't just go with what society gives you, really, really assess for yourself, what you believe in. And then he really taught me also just how to eat, organic foods, and, to focus on reducing waste. And so for me with SISTAIN, Stephen was the inspiration, but I was always, I'm so proud of what they're doing, but it is hardcore. I mean, they live in the the border of Canada and Minnesota. So it's 6 months of winter. It's they're constantly in negative 10 degrees. And they have this wood burning stove, and then they have a yurt that I could stay on the property that I've stayed up there. But it is a hardcore lifestyle. It's intense. And it's more of that, if you've heard of the zero waste movement, it is more of the zero waste lifestyle. So they buy all secondhand everything, they buy, food directly from farmers. And so I was always so inspired by that, but I also was I don't want to do that, I've always thought, so from a very young age, I came from an entrepreneurial family, and a family that, built success. I saw them build success over time. And so I don't know, just because of those, those blessings that I was given, I've always had this deep down in my core, I want to make a difference. And so what is that?
Yeah. So let me just hop in there. That's fascinating. What I'm struck by is the kind of diversity in thought that it sounds like, was existing in your home, and you were sitting there, kind of observing. And I'm curious kind of how your parents were with kind of that diversity of thought, and with your brother in particular, who had maybe a little bit more of like a um, non-traditional, or even maybe more of an extreme viewpoint of, kind of the world. How did they kind of navigate all of that?
It's a great question. I mean, it was it was challenging at times, like when he was, he was like train hopping, and he was like sleeping under bridges with like homeless people, and he was like he was doing some dangerous things. So it was hard for them then, definitely. But as soon as he kind of found his calling of like this back to the land movement, if you've ever heard of it, it's like
Hmm.
traditional ways. So like, how do we live like more like Native Americans, and how do we learn, how to live in a community with like a tribe, and support each other. And so he started learning a lot of that. Um, and once he was drawn to that community, that's when I think my parents were like, oh, thank God, like like they could breathe, because he started, living this more of the, before, I think it was like he went through this punk rock stage, and just like, just the travel and all that. And we just, he would call in, but they were always a little worried. And
Hmm.
once he started living this alternative lifestyle in the woods, living really sustainably, he first lived just in a teepee for a couple years. And once he started living that lifestyle, I think they were like we can breathe,
Yeah.
like
How much older is he than you?
he's 6 years older.
6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, what was it like? I'm just kind of curious. I'm imagining that, like, when you were like little, or maybe, even like in elementary school, and he was, in high school or something, was he kind of like wild and rebellious as a kid, and you were kind of observant of that? And like, what was your observation? Was there something about kind of the way he was being that looked appealing or scary? Or kind of tell me a little bit more about, kind of all of that.
Yeah. So I was always, we've always had a really good relationship, and I've always been inspired by him in the way that, like he used to show up to high school and he had like a giant green mohawk,
Mm-hmm.
and like to me that's such a bold move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always inspired by it, but that wasn't the path that I chose. Like I don't know, I always had this thought like, if you can learn how to work the system, then you can change the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has, I've always kind of like, I have always kind of like fit in, with,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I fit in with a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
different groups of people. Um, but I've never been like the bold one who's like, let's, fight the, societal norms in like a
Mm-hmm.
really challenging, rebellious way. Like I've been much more like, okay, how do I get into the system? How do I learn the system? And
Mm-hmm.
then how do I change the system?
Mm-hmm. And you can remember kind of like feeling that way, at least in hindsight, as a kid, that was kind of more your comfort level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. And obviously, though, your brother is making a big impression, and it sounds like your parents are sort of at least like tolerant, or giving him some freedom, that there isn't this like giant like power clash over the fact that he's got a mohawk.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
true? Yeah.
they're very open-minded people. I mean, they're conservative, and of course, like that, when they go up to his land, they're like, "Well, we would never want to live this way, but like, we're glad you're happy."
Hmm.
And that's kind of, I think that even our dinner conversations growing up, like it was just so much about like asking questions.
Hmm.
Like I just feel like, especially my dad, he is a lawyer, so there is like a bit of a debate, in that.
Hmm.
And I think that he always taught us like ask the questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so I think that was a big part of, and at the end of the day, they wanted us all to like find our way,
Yeah.
and find happiness. And
Yeah.
I mean, I feel really blessed for that.
Yeah. That's really, I mean, as a parent, I know for me, that's kind of all I want for my kids, is just to find their own way, and to, be happy, and maybe even being happy is, um, not necessarily the goal, maybe it's peace or freedom, but just however they choose to find that for themselves is what I think every parent should want for their kids. Not always the case, but sounds like it certainly was in your house, which is great. So tell me a little bit more of like, what were you into as you got into, high school? What were your kind of passions or hobbies, or what were you doing for fun or studying that kind of started to give you some, in hindsight again, what was kind of unfolding for you at that time?
So in high school, I always joke like I was the golden child because like I played all the sports. I was on like homecoming court, prom court, like
Mhm.
all those things, like super involved in like every club there was. So in high school, I really just like got involved with everything that I could and exposed to everything I could and hung out with friends and had fun. So honestly, it wasn't until college that I really woke up, I feel like, to the world
Mhm.
and and really learned how to critically think, um, and assess things. And I think, I studied sociology. Um, I studied a lot of criminology, and I also studied PR and advertising.
Mhm.
Um, and that was definitely when even when I started assessing like what was the impact that Stephen has had on me, and like what do I stand for, and like who am I? Because before then, I went to a Catholic grade school, I went to a Catholic high school, I knew all the same kids for my whole life.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like I ever had to identify my own identity,
Mhm.
until I got to college, when I was like on my own in Chicago, and really really started to question like who am I
Mhm.
outside of my family, outside of my friends.
Mhm. Yeah. And what was it about college, or was it your studies, or what was it that kind of really woke you up?
I think it was definitely the sociology, studying, um, studying sociology was hugely impactful. I had some amazing professors that really just challenged my thinking, and it just like broadened my, whole perspective of society and cultural norms and all of
Mhm.
those things. But I also think that just like being in Chicago too, like I was from a like a small central Illinois town. Getting to Chicago and then being around like a wide variety of diverse people was also just very challenging to, like it wasn't just this like, all Caucasian,
Mhm.
Catholic school. Like it was just so different. So just the people and the conversations that really did start to challenge, who I was. Um, and at that time that's when I started waking up to just, environmental concerns. And I remember my brother specifically coming into my college cafeteria and just like noticing like all the plastic waste, that goes into just buying a lunch every day
Mhm.
as a college
Mhm.
student. And I really really started waking up to that. So I started working at like, designer resale stores, so that I wasn't buying new clothes.
Mhm.
I started waking up to all of the marginalities that people face, just the all honestly all the problems of the world, really,
Mhm.
just through the studies and through the diversity of the crowd, and also through, you know my
Mhm.
family too along the way.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I want to ask you another question about your brother. Um, I've got a bunch of questions running through my mind here, but you describe yourself as the golden girl and on the homecoming, prom, clubs, sports, everything, right? And I'm wondering, like, and your brother's, got the mohawk and, taking a very different path. Was he always kind of loving and accepting of you for who you were, or was there some sort of like any animosity or kind of I don't know, anything there that was other than accepting? Because it would seem like maybe somebody who's so kind of convicted about taking this traditional non-traditional path, and punk rocker, and willing to kind of train hop and all this stuff, might be even a little at that age like angry or resentful about the golden child. Was
Mhm.
there any of that went on?
There was not ever. He was always very welcoming and accepting of me. Um, And I think the 6 years difference, also played a role in that for
Yeah.
sure. I think if we were closer in age, there it might have been different. I
Yeah.
think that what I saw from him growing up was less acceptance of himself and trying to figure out himself versus, other people. Like
Yeah.
I think that he still does he could like he would and in terms of consumerism, I think there are, he still definitely challenges that. So even the way that I live versus the way he lives, like he challenges it, but at the same time, he's never judgmental about it.
Yeah, that's great. And I had a feeling that was the case. I wanted to just like double check and make sure, but I think it's important to highlight because, I think in most kids, teenagers, young adults that are kind of not really secure with themselves or, trying to take a different path in life, but feeling the societal pressure or the parental peer pressure, whatever it is that kind of the conditioning that keeps people from taking that path, sometimes can get kind of angry and take it out on other people because they're
Yeah.
struggling so much within themselves. And, maybe it's the fact that you were his, baby sister, but like, pretty remarkable that, none of that happened, that he was,
Yeah.
just a big,
Yeah.
good big brother to you. I
Yeah. He
love
was,
that.
yeah, an amazing person. And he really kind of like, he played in like a punk rock band. He like leaned into like, he built a skate park in our backyard. So
It's
like really,
awesome.
like really, really did a lot of like skateboarding and like he got into videography. So like he did definitely, he like channeled his energy
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
certain ways. Yeah.
Awesome. It's really killer. I should have your brother on the podcast at
Yeah,
some point
you
too.
should. Yeah.
But what I'm also kind of intrigued by is that, you described yourself as like kind of, I think I forget exactly how you worded it, but like knowing the system and working within the system and challenging the system, kind of coming at it from that approach. And it's a interesting thing. It's kind of a fine line, like you said, like even on the consumerism piece, maybe, he'll still challenge you. There's like, I don't know if you can go any further than your brother's gone. Maybe there's even another level left. I don't know. But like it's kind of an interesting and maybe just a personal thing as we decide kind of how we want to navigate out of the norms and like where we choose to draw the line. Right. Like,
Mhm.
there's certain things that I know you wouldn't do and certain things that you definitely would only do, and somehow in there you've kind of found a line, at least for now, for yourself, and maybe that line keeps moving and it keeps kind of changing as we go. But yeah, I don't know, maybe you could just kind of react to that in your own journey as you're kind of moving through that college stage and starting to open up and find your way, kind of how maybe the societal norm or whatever other conditioning was there kind of kept you maybe in a lane.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so when I graduated college, I feel like I like dove into my career like so hard, like just dove headfirst into it. And I think that that's also like because I come from an entrepreneurial family, I was always taught growing up that if you work hard enough, you will succeed. Like that was
Mhm.
just like, oh, like it was, I remember a time when I was like, 12 years old and I wanted a moped. And I was like, okay, what can I do to make enough money to get this moped I want? And I like washed windows, I did all these things, had lemonade sales, like sold like bracelets, everything I could to like make enough money to get this moped. So like that's always like that's honestly the thing that I'm still working on, like conditioning wise, unwinding, because I think that it is true that, hard work, pays off. Like that's so true. But I think that also, and this is what I saw, especially at the beginning of my career, but I still am working on it today, is if you work too hard and you forget to like play, then that can lead to some really dark times,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're saying. maybe too well. Right. This has been part of my journey and struggle, even, in recent years, where it's like, hmm, that you go into this phase where you want to earn. And in my case, I was lucky enough to um, find something that I felt was really kind of aligned and really pulled all the things that I was passionate about into a business that I had some experience in. And that's why, I started Kaufman Development, was really with the intention of building community in a different way, in a way that was aligned with who I am and the things I was passionate about. But there was definitely like a work hard, earning, make your way, and kind of find your, financial freedom and whatever else, right? And it's hard work when you're building. Then you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, now what am I still doing this for? Is the impact there? Is the passion there? What is enough, or how hard do I want to keep working? I mean, play is important, family, fun, other things become important. So that's definitely a real struggle. I mean, even kind of going back to your brother for a second, it's like, I'm imagining that when you live that kind of life, money isn't as important, right? You can kind of have what you need, and you can always, I'm sure there's a work involved. Money is a factor. I mean, you have to contribute, you have to be able to feed your family and, sustain your life. But it doesn't mean that you're maybe necessarily living the same way where money is as important. So, again, I don't know. I'm kind of just like intrigued by this, how we start to find our way, how we decide, well, how much play should we have? How much work should we have? How much, does money play a role here? And it sounds like you were starting to kind of grapple with that too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think that, I'm still in the stage where I'm building. Like, so I own two companies, so SISTAIN and Brand Effect. Brand Effect is a holistic marketing and design firm. And then SISTAIN is, my passion company.
Mhm, mhm,
It's like it's how you talk about Kaufman Development. Like it to me is, it feels like so aligned with my passion. Because beyond even my brother, like I do also just feel this like deep connection to nature and like protecting nature. And when I was working in like corporate advertising at like big firms in Chicago, I after a while I was like, what am I doing? What am I even doing here? Like
mhm,
what is this? Like I felt like half the year we were just creating decks and like, selling silly campaigns, and it just felt kind of meaningless to me. And so I like took off, just went to South America for 3 months and like really spent most of the time in Patagonia. And so like that is like, to me, that's why I created Sustain, because I was intimidated by the zero waste movement, but I wanted to live a more sustainable lifestyle. So I was like, how can I make this more accessible, but also more aspirational? Because a lot of the offerings out there today are very like hippie and granola, and
mhm,
just, I don't think that they can reach a wider mass audience. And I think that if we can all make, small sustainable changes consistently, then, if we get millions of people doing like zero waste imperfectly, then that's like hugely impactful, hugely
mhm,
impactful.
mhm,
um, but yeah, I think so. I don't know if I answered your question at all.
mhm,
um, but yeah, I think that just, yeah, finding your passion, and going after it, and getting in, you know focusing on that alignment, really does also have to be driven by, your intuition, and for me like meditation and like real true awareness. Like, right, like I stretch myself too thin. Money is important, um but I am always, each and every day trying to move more towards alignment. And
mhm.
what does that look like? And how do I get there? And
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. So let's just kind of back up for a second. So I definitely want to talk about sustain. And also, you're, holistic marketing, you studied marketing, and I don't know if you went straight into working for yourself or if there was kind of corporate experience or other experience that kind of led you. I want to make sure we highlight kind of how you made that entrepreneurial jump. You mentioned it was in your family, but I'm kind of curious, like exactly what your path was to that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when I graduated college, I went to like big advertising firms
Hmm.
in Chicago. So big, thousands and thousands of people, global companies. Like I was doing work in, Singapore, Malaysia, like different, international cities, and then I was based in Chicago. We had, markets in South America, markets in Europe, etc. And and so I did that, I think, for 6 or 7 years before I went to South America, because that's when I just hit my, like, I just felt like it was such a, you had to kind of climb the corporate ladder, and I just wasn't interested. I was much more
Hmm.
interested in, like, how do we do this in the most impactful way for a client? Like, because I just felt like everything in an advertising firm is, so it's very, a traditional advertising firm, which is what I was working at. It still is to this day very siloed,
Hmm.
very siloed. And then I also saw at these firms too that they were, selling campaigns for, like, they'd be like, hey, here's a campaign we're going to do, and we're charging $6 to $7 million for it. And I was like, I could do that with my friends for like $40,000.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I went to South America, and then I actually got this job in politics after the 3 months that I was there. It just kind of like fell in my lap. And so I worked in politics, on a statewide campaign for about 2 years, which was
Hmm.
really, really good experience, because I was just managing, I was a digital director. I was like managing multi-million-dollar budgets,
Hmm.
and really, like, at a holistic level.
Hmm.
Um,
What do you mean
and
by that at a holistic level?
like, I was leading advertising, website builds, email marketing,
Got it.
involved with coordinating with direct marketing, like just
You were
every
doing
piece.
everything, yeah.
Yeah.
And was this somebody that you were supportive of, passionate? Like, were you happy to be? Like, why did you say yes to that role?
I said yes to it, because I knew that, like, this leader specifically at his core was in it for the right reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was really important to me. But also, I said yes to it because I wanted the challenge of, like, feeling like I was building a startup.
Hmm.
And I knew
Got
I
it.
wanted that, because even when I was at Leo Burnett for a while,
Hmm.
if you've heard of that
Yep.
firm. And like, even there, like, I was on the analytics team, then I switched over to strategy, and then I was doing some creative work. So I was just kind of like jumping around because I just wanted to be involved in everything that there was. So I knew that I needed to be, like, in a more of a startup environment, and I thought, okay, well, this is a great chance to really, see what it's like to build a startup, because that's what a
Hmm.
political campaign really is.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, and it was great experience. Okay, so then what?
So yeah, so I did that for 2 years, and then I was like, okay, politics are a nasty place. Like, I just
Right,
so I like,
right.
people have to do it, and I hope that, the best people get into politics, and I like, but it's a hard space to work in.
Yeah.
It's just a really negative space to work in. So after 2 years, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm never gonna get in politics again. And I started Brand Effect, my
Hmm.
holistic marketing and design firm.
Hmm.
Um, because at that point I was like, I have enough experience to just start doing this with, like, freelancers, and
Hmm.
just do the work. And so that's what we do today. We do branding, we do, you know website designs, we do email marketing, we do, any design work, but really it's focused on design and strategy, really at a
Hmm.
holistic level.
Hmm. Great. That's great. Okay, good. So that's your path. That's your first kind of step into being an entrepreneur, as a career. And then tell me a little bit more about kind of how sustain kind of comes into the mix. Like, I hear, I've heard you kind of describe that a little bit, but like, is there a moment where you're like, I need to do this. I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah.
That start part.
Yeah. So with Brand Effect, um, I worked with, I know Reagan Walsh too, but I've worked with
Yeah.
her for like 3 years. She's like an
Yeah.
amazing, has been my life coach for 3 or 4 years now, since I moved to Columbus. And she really, like, working with her and talking with her and doing, coaching with her, I just realized that I was like, brand effect's not like it, like it's
Hmm.
not like the company that will, fulfill me and challenge me for the rest of my life. It's like, I always felt like this, like I really wanted to create like something that like used, all of my skill sets with like data and marketing and all the things that I'd learned to create like a really holistic experience that was mission driven.
Hmm.
And so that was really important to me. So I was always kind of like looking for this idea. Um, but that's when I started, after, so it's like, when I was in advertising, I was honestly, I was really stressed out, and I didn't focus on the environment at all. Like
Hmm.
I like lost touch with that completely once I had started my career. I
Hmm.
was like shopping at Zara. I was like, fast fashion, like, buying things just to feel good, just to like get that dopamine hit.
Hmm.
Um, and so and then honestly, politics was even more stressful. So that was crazy. So once I started shifting, and then, with even just building your own company, like you really have to deeply think about your every decision, because it's up to you, the direction of where you're going. Um, and so once I started that, that's when I was like, okay, I want to get back to like just protecting the environment. Like I want to really, lean into that. And I felt like as soon as I started digging into like, okay, well, based on my own lifestyle, how can I live a more sustainable life? I started digging into it, and it was just so overwhelming. Like it
Hmm.
was so completely overwhelming. It was like zero waste, like PDF documents that were like 100 pages long on like how to live more sustainably. I just felt so overwhelmed by it. And I was like, how can we simplify this so that we can teach people how to live more sustainably, and then also have a one-stop shop that, gives you access to, at the time when I started SISTAIN, I used to say like, we're building the Nordstrom of sustainable shopping. So
Hmm.
with everything within, like fashion, home, wellness, all the different categories.
Hmm.
um, but now, I think that if you're building a company in today's world, because of all the noise, um, I do think that you need to like choose a niche, and then expand on it. So it's like, if you're building a lifestyle company, which is what Sustain is, it's like, what we decided to do is really focus in on our philosophy, which is take care of yourself so you can take care of the planet. So
Hmm.
that is really like, our product categories now are focused on home and wellness specifically. And then if we see other categories fitting in to the plan later on, like as our community, whatever they ask for, um, then we'll add on them. But we really, really want to focus on like, how can we teach people to take care of themselves so they can take care of the planet? Because that to me is like the root issue
Hmm.
with sustainability and making sustainable choices.
Mhm. Talk a little bit more about kind of how you do that for yourself. You've talked about your meditation practice. Tell me a little bit more about kind of what modalities or what kind of self-care, you work with that's really helpful for you to do that for yourself first.
It's always evolving,
Hmm.
forever and always. But I during the so there's a couple things that I do daily are like, I really, really try to meditate
Hmm.
twice a day. I really try to get a meditation in, and I usually am able to achieve that at like, that's like, if I don't do anything else, like 2 meditations a day, that's what I need. Moving my body, going on walks, connecting with nature, drinking water is something that I'm still working on. Like sometimes during the day when I'm like working, I don't drink enough water. So like, drinking water, making smoothies, using non-toxic products, taking micro breaks is something that I recently adopted a dog, and even just going on walks with the dog throughout the day, just really trying to step away from, the fast paced life that we all live, and the constant communication, and, step out of that. And I even do like, I'll do body scans during the day. And I'm not perfect at any of this, but I also journal a lot, a lot, a lot, a
Mm.
lot. I journal a lot to really and I do therapy, counseling, to really be in touch with, like, I think that I know I've heard you talk about this a little bit before too, but I do really truly believe that, like, everything that you run into, every barrier, every, just life in general is like a giant lesson. Like, there's lessons in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always ask myself too, if something happens and I'm like, oh, this is, frustrating and this is whatever, I always try to ask myself, how is this happening for me? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
lesson can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and that really does, once you start asking those questions, it really does, even if you're frustrated, like it pivots your mindset to, how is this happening for me, and how is this growing me as a human?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is always evolving. And that's kind of maybe kind of coming back to this point of, like, continuing to find your own kind of lane and where those boundaries are for you, and kind of how you want to find that work-life balance, and how far do you want to go into the sustainable movement. And it is an evolution. There's maybe even some times where you step out a little further than you want and you come back. That meditation practice probably helps, kind of all of those modalities really kind of help keep you grounded and centered as you move through that journey.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've started, because of Rachel John, who actually does
Mm-hmm.
sound baths here in Columbus. She's like one of my best friends. And we like just got back from Mexico together yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did, even there, we did sound baths on the beach, and,
Mm-hmm.
Reiki sessions that were like really impactful. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely, because of her, even trying to get deeper into like,
Mm-hmm.
what is spirituality to me, and like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I get to a deeper, like, what is my highest self, like, what
Mm-hmm.
does alignment mean? And um yeah, and I mean, I don't know, it's kind of almost like the Buddhist, seeking like enlightenment, like, what is
Mm-hmm.
that, what is that, how do I unwind the conditioning that, that has been my life, my childhood, my, experiences, um and really create a life that is truly impactful, and just, my serving the greater good.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing for me to observe. I've also been, on that journey in many ways. I feel like, my whole life, and in maybe the last, decade, I've had to really go outside of Columbus to try to find the modalities and the people even that maybe were already moving in that direction. Not that it didn't exist here, I just didn't really know as many people in that kind of on that part of the journey. And I do think that there is just a lot more people here in Columbus, and maybe, even globally, that are starting to kind of think about this, and act in it. I mean, it's very common for, just happened today, friends to ask, hey, can I, meet the TM person, or are you doing this or that, or could I, whatever, right? Like, people are really kind of feeling a desire, a pull towards, um, you know, being, awake or enlightened or aligned or healthier, happier, peaceful, whatever it is. There's a lot of that going on, and some amazing people that are showing up here in Columbus to do this work. It's really a great thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's so important, and it is, like, I do think it's, it's a result of, I mean, look at the world in the last couple of years,
Hmm.
and like, and honestly too, just the fast-paced communication, of just like being always on. It's like, how do you not react in an environment and in a society that is kind of set up to just, be like constantly communicating at all points of, the day. Um, and that's what, even with, with my companies and the culture I'm trying to build and cultivate, it's like, I had a friend who said last week, she said, I just have to accept it as true that I will always have to work on vacation. And I was like, that to me is like so heartbreaking. Like I don't want that. I don't want that for my team. I don't want that for my culture. Like I want people to be able to take time off so that they can truly reach their highest potential, because I think there's just a lot of burnout today. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of hustle, and I think that what you're talking about is a result of people being like, well, what am I really here for?
Yeah. Yeah. I have some mixed feelings about that. But not, it's more for me, it's more about, do you love what you do and for work, right? Because um, I think that if you have to work on vacation, but you love your work so much that you don't feel like you're ever working, right? That's kind of the goal. And I know people will kind of scoff at that, but I'm not saying you shouldn't take downtime either. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take vacation. I just finished a 3-month sabbatical where I didn't work at all, and it was amazing. And I think that people should. And we just, one of the things that came out of my sabbatical is we're instituting a flex time program where people, in fact, we have our first woman who's going to Peru for a month to work from there. And, I think that we don't emphasize enough the passion piece and the love of work. What you're doing with Sustain, you love that. It feels filling and purposeful and creative, and it's an expression of who you are and the things that you value. That if you had to open some emails about that while you were gone, that's very different than this, like, I gotta work. There's a
Yeah,
difference in there that I think is maybe more important. Again, not that you
yeah.
shouldn't take the time off, but I think it's more important about, like what I've been saying since I'm back from sabbatical is, I'm going to go on sabbatical for the rest of my life. I'm just only going to do the things that I love to do. And those will be things that are a part of my work. And then I'll never feel like I'm needing to go on sabbatical.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that. I do. I think that, um, I think what you're stating is that, to me, it represents like living in alignment. That's like it, when you can mix your passion and your skills, and and you feel like you're just like your soul, it's like on fire when you work on that, which is definitely how I feel about Sustain.
Mhm.
Um, then yeah, it doesn't feel, you're right. It's like you get into this flow state
Mhm.
where it does, time is, it's just different in that
Yeah.
state.
Yeah. Good. Well, all right. Tell me, what next? Where are you going? I know that, Sustain was a side hustle, but you're getting some traction. Tell me a little bit more about kind of where you're going from here.
Yeah. So I have lots of big dreams with Sustain. So right now we're an educational media hub, like we're in e-commerce. We are building a community um, of like-minded people, and but like in the future, and what I want to offer, with Sustain is, I would love to, you know, really focus on, people, profit, and planet, and create give back programs, advocacy programs, focused on protecting the environment. I have some, I'd love to create an experiential shopping, um, brick and mortar, or even pop up, that just feels like, because that's what we've done a lot of pop ups, and I can see people, they just light up when they can experience the brand in person. Um, and then creating like, we are really, in terms of standards, like we're trying to raise the bar for brands, just in general. It's like really focus on the brand quality, focus on the sustainability efforts, focus on the progress, the packaging, all of those things, and really raise the standard. So we have a system already of, how we pull all this data in, we collect all this data manually, and we assess brands before we add them to, like to be sustain approved. But like really creating a sophisticated like data science model is what I want to do, so that we can be like so transparent. That will continue to evolve as everything will. But yeah, so there's a number of other things that I'm like really excited about, like just creating like, a registry, a subscription model for like for like no waste restock stuff. Like we have a dish block for cleaning your dishes instead of like a plastic bottle of soap. So like those kind of things that like make sense to create subscriptions around. But yeah, I mean, just overall, like with Sustain, like we're just really trying to empower consumers to align their values with their behaviors.
What is the biggest obstacle for you? Like what's the one thing that kind of um, is in the way, or the hardest thing for you to overcome to kind of continue to go to the next step with the business?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I mean, right now, money
Mm-hmm.
is the biggest obstacle. And so I am, I'm working on fundraising,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I have realized that I'm like, it's a very competitive market, just like the online space in general. And I think that it's kind of like, fundraising to get where we want to be is necessary. And I don't want to do it alone. Like I want really smart mentors, advisors, people who can help me create this. Like I don't want to be I want to be the decision maker, but not necessarily like, just it's like me and my creative director. And so I really think, yeah, money right now is the biggest obstacle. So that's I've decided we're fundraising.
Yeah,
So I'm
good.
working on that right now.
I expected you to say that. It often is. Um, Jaclyn, let's start to wrap up. Tell me kind of final thoughts or anything that's on your mind that you want to share with the audience, anything that we didn't get to that you think is important. The air is yours.
Great. I think that, just closing thoughts, at Sustain, we truly do believe that like collectively we can make a huge impact. And I mean, like I said, what we're trying to build is a world where we do hold brands to a higher standard. And we unite, to vote with our dollar. And it really overall like Sustain, it's what I love about what you're doing is it's about giving more than we're taking. Like I want to build this company and I want it to be profitable, but I want it to be profitable so that we can make the greatest impact possible. So if you are, intimidated by the zero waste movement, like I am, the zero and zero waste, then definitely, join the community. You can join it at thesustain.com/community. And then also just on Instagram, DM us your sustainable lifestyle questions, because the content that we create is completely based, and even the products we choose is completely based on our community and the feedback that we get and the questions that we get. And that's where we focus our energy. So, but yeah, thank you so much for having me here and for doing the work that you guys do at Gravity. It really is truly inspiring.
Well, thank you. The whole point of Gravity, I shouldn't say the whole point, but one of the things that's really important is collaboration and just providing a space that allows others to share our beliefs about, consciousness and community and supporting human beings in the journey of life. It's really important, and it's one of the things that I am so grateful for, is when there are others who share those beliefs, who can kind of help fill the space to create content, to be a part of events, to kind of help further the mission. It's not something that Gravity by itself is able to do. It takes, a lot of people to show up and express themselves in a similar way for us to really try to find the ways to connect with a large audience. And you definitely have been a great part of that. I look forward to continuing to collaborate with you. I'd love to, see what Sustain's doing. I really think it's a very valuable service that you're offering people. People want, oftentimes, I thought maybe the other, obstacle that you might, and I'm sure you do experience, is people are intimidated. People are afraid or scared or don't know where to turn for that first step. And so being able to just simply DM questions, I mean, what a great service that offers for people.
Yeah, yeah, it is true. I mean, 77% of people want to live more sustainably, but so many just do not know how. They don't
Yeah.
know where to start. And like I said, on my journey, I was just like so overwhelmed by the information, so intimidated. And even with, I see my brother and how he lives, and I was intimidated even from that perspective. So yeah, I do think that's what we're here for. We're here to help people live more sustainably, and offer something that's different, offer something that's aesthetically curated, but also like really incredible brands who sustainability is at their core mission.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks, Jaclyn. We'll be in touch, I'm sure, but it's been great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. I
All
appreciate you so
right.
much.
Likewise.